Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the passive voice in English. So, to do this, first I want you to look at a picture for me. This picture is showing a street that's situated in the Notting Hill district of London. It's called Portobello Road, and very bright buildings are situated here. Furthermore, the world's largest antiques market is located right here. It's one of the most visited sites by tourists in London. You must have heard of the Notting Hill Carnival, the most colorful street festival that takes place here. So, if we analyze the given description, we will surely notice the passive structure contained in some of these sentences. Anytime you use the phrase is situated, is called, is located by, you are using the present simple passive. So now let's look at how to form the passive voice. If I say something like, we invited Lisa to the party, here I'm speaking in active voice. We invited Lisa. We, the subject, is doing the action. So the order of the sentence goes something like subject, verb, object. However, what if I want to change things up a bit and say, Lisa was invited to the party? Here, the subject is receiving the action of the verb. The object in the first sentence becomes the subject, and the subject now becomes what we call the agent. For example, Lisa was invited to the party by me. By me shows any of my listeners that I am the agent. I invited Lisa. But Lisa is receiving the action. And that is why we call this the passive voice, because she is not acting, she is being acted upon. And the word order in a passive sentence will be subject, verb, agent, not object. So let's look at another example. Martin Cooper invented the mobile phone. This is an active voice, but if I change it to passive, I would say, the mobile phone was invented by Martin Cooper. Here, we're using by, followed by the agent, to say who or what does the action. However, this isn't the only way that we can use the passive structure. Another example of passive voice is that I can say, the room was filled with a pleasant floral smell. And here we use with, combined with an instrument, material, or ingredient to give more information about the smell itself and about the room. The room was filled with a pleasant smell. The room now smells pleasant, like flowers. A few more examples that we can look at. If I say something like, we celebrate Pancake Day in February, this is an active voice. But Pancake Day is celebrated in February. Here, this is passive, and all I'm saying is that everyone celebrates this holiday. And when I say Pancake Day is celebrated, there is an implied everybody, or everybody who celebrates it, in February. Another example, I can say something like, they have already built the house, or in passive voice, the house has already been built. And here, my focus changes. I've given you the same information, but in the first sentence, I'm focusing on they. They are the subject. And you could use this to answer a question like, who has already built the house? Well, they have already built the house. In the passive example, my emphasis and my focus is on the house itself. Has the house been built? Yes, it has. I don't really care who did it. I only care about the house itself. We form the passive voice by using the verb to be, followed by the past participle of the main verb. So let's look at some ways that we do this by looking at chart 1 together. If I'm talking in the present simple tense, in active voice, I would say something like, we eat biscuits. But in passive voice, this becomes, the biscuits are eaten. Now, in the present continuous tense, we are eating biscuits now, this turns into, the biscuits are being eaten now. Present perfect, we have already eaten the biscuits, becomes, the biscuits have already been eaten. In present perfect continuous, we have been eating biscuits. We can't. There is no passive voice for the present perfect continuous tense. Now, in past simple, moving into our past tenses, we ate biscuits yesterday. This will become, the biscuits were eaten yesterday. Past continuous, we were eating biscuits. The biscuits were being eaten. Past perfect continuous, we had been eating the biscuits. Again, this is not used. We do not use passive voice for the past perfect continuous tense. In the future tenses, for future simple, we will eat the biscuits. The biscuits will be eaten. Future continuous, we will be eating the biscuits. Again, passive voice is not generally used with the future continuous tense. In future perfect, we will have eaten the biscuits. In passive voice, the biscuits will have been eaten. If you're using a modal verb combined with the present infinitive, something like we should not eat the biscuits, this simply turns into the biscuits should not be eaten. And finally, with a modal verb and the perfect infinitive, we should have eaten the biscuits turns into the biscuits should have been eaten. So, to recap, the present perfect continuous, the future continuous, as well as the past and the future perfect continuous tenses are generally not used in passive voice. They exist, and you may hear someone use them from time to time, but they're just too long and too difficult, and we prefer simpler means of talking. So now let's move on to discussing the impersonal passive voice. The impersonal passive voice is used to put a little bit of distance between the speaker and what the speaker is saying. It's generally used a lot by media or by politicians. For example, if I say in active voice, we expect the company to deliver the goods on time. The personal passive would be the company is expected to deliver the goods on time. Here, I'm still talking about the company. But in the impersonal passive, it is expected that the company deliver the goods on time. To form the personal passive, we use the subject, followed by the passive and to with the infinitive. To form the impersonal passive, we usually use it with the passive construction, as well as follow it with a that clause. This it is just a general it, kind of just like it's a fact of life that it is said. And this allows us to distance ourselves from what we are saying. The most common impersonal passive constructions are as follows. It is believed that, it is known that, it is considered that, it's expected that, it's reported that, it's thought that, and there are a few others that you can see on your screen right now. Finally, let's examine some of the most common mistakes when using passive constructions. So let's look at the examples, and I want you to choose the correct one. First, they're supposed to get married soon, or they get married soon. Correct, it's the first one, supposed to get married. Remember the infinitive here. The next example, the cake was made by flour, eggs, and cheese. The cake was made with flour, eggs, and cheese. Correct, it's the second. Here, flour, eggs, and cheese are ingredients, so we use with. By we use for actors or agents. Please remember this. So in the next example, the film is considered to be a box office hit, or the film is considered a box office hit. Gotcha. In this one, both of these sentences are correct. With or without to, you can use both. In the next example, who was the house decorated by? And by who was the house decorated? Right, in this example, by who was the house decorated is the same as asking who decorated the house. And if we were speaking in active voice, This would be correct. However, because we want passive voice, we should ask, who was the house decorated by? Next, he was seen leaving the office, and he was seen leave the office. Correct. After seen here, you need the ing form of leave. You need the gerund. He was seen leaving the office, not leave. So, why do we use the passive construction instead of the active construction? Well, first, we can use the passive construction when it is either obvious or not important who or what the doer of the action is. For example, the building was damaged in the 19th century. Or, on the Fool's Day, you're officially allowed to pull pranks on people. Here, who is allowing you or who damaged the buildings is irrelevant. It's not important. We don't need to know it, so we use passive. Also, in passive sentences, we attach greater importance to the action itself. And we can provide emphasis on either the doer or the recipient of the action however we want to. Let's look at this example. If I'm telling you about Apple and about Steve Jobs, I can say the following. Apple Incorporated was founded by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in California. The company produces a great variety of electronics as well as distributes media content. It's a global brand that is consumed by millions of people nowadays. In the first sentence, I'm focusing on the company itself and the subject of the sentence. That's why we put it first. The second sentence, however, is used in the active voice. And the third sentence we may have formulated this way. Millions of people consume the brand. However, the passive structure gives us an opportunity to put the brand first and attach greater importance to it. It really lets us know that it's a global brand. So I'd like to bring your attention now to the importance of the passive voice usage. During your exams, try to avoid chains of sentences using active voice. He did A, he did B, then he did C. For example, he was preparing for the coming holiday. First, he decorated the house, then he bought presents. It's much better if you use something like, he was preparing for the upcoming holidays. The presents were not bought, though, until he had decorated the house. Here, he did A, and C wasn't done until he did B. Now, I've spent so much time discussing passive voice with you today because A, it makes you a very interesting speaker if you can properly go between using active and passive constructions. And B, because this will be very important on the written section of the test that you're going to have to take, as well as in both the written and the spoken sections of exams like the IELTS and the TOEFL for those of you who want to study in foreign universities or even work abroad. Be sure to spend a little bit of time reviewing this lesson as well as the information in the tables. See you next time.